Hey, everybody. Oh my boy, this is a good one here today. I found a sister that she got an incredible story that is gonna defy all of what we've been told. I'm gonna let her tell it. It's her story, and this is her belief, and she looked like she know what she's saying. So that's what we do on Strong Inspiration. We get people who look like they know what they're saying and they know what they're saying, and we let it go from there. All right. So come on, folks, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button on the video, hit the notifications button so you get a little bing when I put new content up, which I put maybe 3-4 videos a week. It's that much out there, and people are now beginning to call me and say, I got a story to tell. I'm looking all up down the internet, all up and around the corners and stuff like that, looking for some Black history to share with you, because that's what we do here. This is what I like to say, where Black history lives. All right, so hit the subscribe, like, tell somebody. Oh, and by the way, I got a movie out, 75 minutes long, how slaves went to college, what racists did to destroy Black business districts, and what they did in Detroit, where I'm based right now. They ran a freeway right through our area, just eliminated it back in the 50s, and they did it a bunch of cities across the country.
Definitely.
And talk about Black millionaires in the 1800s, along with some interviews of people whose family owned the business in the early 1900s. It's streaming on Amazon. And then to complement it, I wrote this book. It's titled Black Business Book, which this has over 200 facts. It's like the movie, but it's like more broad. It's got more stuff. And it's easy to read because I just give you the fact. I don't try to give you my interpretation of the fact. I just give you the fact as it is, and then I give you the reference in the back so you can link up and look up the fact yourself. Because you're going to be like, man, I ain't believe that. I ain't never heard that story. That's what the book do to you. And that's what we do on this channel, Strong Inspirations. The book and the movie are on Amazon or on my website, inspirationsbystrong.com. So now we're about to go into this interview with this sister. She's so cold. She got pearls on her video.
That's right.
That's how she do what she do. You know she classy. I'm looking forward to this one. So, sister, go ahead and introduce yourself and blow our mind.
Yes, good morning, and thank you for having me. My name is Audrey Terry Williams. I live in Hampton, Virginia. I was born and raised in Newport News, Virginia, and I am a product of 2 HBCUs. I got my undergrad at Norfolk State University and my master's at Hampton University, both in history education. I taught school for 10 years, and then I went to work for the federal government, not teaching history, but designing training. So that's what I did for almost 30 years. So that's part of me. And right now I am the president of the Hampton Roads branch of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, ASALH, founded in 1915. So I am the president of our local branch. We've been around since 2010. I'm also a member of the board of directors for Project 16 Incorporate. And that is the story we're going to tell you today.
And so what was it like? I mean, you always had a Black history kind of thing in you, growing in you, and then the college brought it out. How did all that go?
No, believe it or not, I grew up in a home where my mom, we always had Black books, Black magazines. So I saw it, but I really didn't pay too much attention to it until I got to college and started to read and learn more.
Let me ask you this, and I ask people this, and I'm a little bit off, what we talking about. But you say you grew up there in North Carolina, in Virginia. When you grew up in Virginia or them southern states, and you hear the monuments that's in your city that's dedicated to Black history, and I would suspect that many of those monuments aren't so good.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I mean, we overcame it. That's the backdrop. But nonetheless, you know, during the time, what does it hurt you when you like walk downtown in your city and say, man, that's where they hung the people?
Yes.
Bada boom, bada
Yes.
bing.
It's very hurtful. And I realize, you know, I don't believe we should get rid of it. I think it should be put in a museum or something because that is history. But I don't think it should be a reminder. You know, we as a people have endured so much. And when you walk down the streets, they have the whipping posts, the slave auction sites. I mean, those things, they are very hurtful.
Okay,
And
let me stop you there. So in your city, there's a whooping post?
no, not here, but they had some. I think it was somewhere in Fredericksburg or something. We didn't have one here, but they do have them. They did have, and matter of fact, I forgot one place that just recently removed it. Yeah.
Now, what's a whipping post?
That's where they would take the slaves, the enslaved people, to a site, usually in the center of the city, and brutally beat them for a punishment or just because they didn't like them. Yeah, they had a whipping. Yes, yeah. It's very painful. It's a, you know, and I had the opportunity to go to Ghana in 2009, and we went to what they call the castles, which were the dungeons where they, you know, where they kept those enslaved people until they shipped them out. I tell people all the time, I said, I cried the whole time I was there because all I could do was to envision, you know, my ancestors, you know, being there and living in those dungeons and naked. I mean, it was just, it's something I tell everybody. I tell any Black person or anybody that if you have not gone, you should.
Yeah,
because
I can't imagine that.
It changes you. It makes you a different person when you come back.
And so this kind of leads into you know, what, you know, you're telling me in Hampton.
Yes.
And I'm gonna let you go take it from here. There's a fort.
Yes.
Tell us the history of this.
Well, the fort is called Fort Monroe. It was an army post, but in 1619, it was just a little island that there was the Indians used it for for fishing and all like that. But in 1619, on August the 25th, they finally gave us a date a couple of years ago that they had a ship called the White Lion that landed with 20 and odd enslaved Africans on the ship. So the first landing of enslaved Africans was not at Jamestown. It was at Fort Monroe, which is, it was called Point Comfort at the time, which is now present day Fort Monroe. And so many people, you know, always say, well, that was not the first Africans here, which is true. But the story is that they were the first ones in English occupied territory because we became English because, you know, Spain had them in Florida because St. Augustine is the oldest city. So they were there. But our story is that we were the first in English occupied territory in Point Comfort and not Jamestown. You know, for years, people still think it was Jamestown.
Okay, let me tell you what a little bit I know, and let me see. Hold on, before I tell you what a little bit I know, what you're telling me is that the first African slaves were in Florida.
Well, yes, and they were,
and that was before 1619.
Yes, because I don't remember you know, if you Google St. Augustine, that is the oldest city. So when we said that the first ones arrived, we're talking about English occupied territory because we speak English. See, now if we were speaking Spanish, it would be a different story because they were in Florida, in St. Augustine. I can't remember, I don't know the date, but
yeah, don't worry about it. We get it. We put it down.
And there. Also, we have to also listen. There are stories that the Indians tell about these nomad traders that they dealt with that had hair like the tail of a buffalo. So we do know that there were Africans in the New World. We know that. But our story begins with English occupied territory. And that's the story. That's where we, you know, because whenever I talk to people, they say, well, they didn't land there first. Yes, I know. But we're talking about English occupied territory. And that is
the difference of when they when they deal with that. Now, yes. What I gathered is there was a slave ship coming, let's say out of England or what have you. It was going through the Caribbean. And from the Caribbean, I guess it was coming to America with 20 slaves. That's what they say happened in Jamestown. And then somehow that ship was captured.
Yeah, they were
What's
captured.
That story?
They were captured by some English pirates because when they left Angola. See, they left Angola they were going to the silver mines in Mexico, and they had two pirate ships of England that took some of those enslaved people. They took about 60 of them, and some were on the White Lion, and then we had the Treasurer. Now, the White Lion came in 1619, August the 25th, and that was when John Rolfe, who was the secretary of the Virginia Company, wrote in his log, because he was kind of like a spy. He would go into the colonies to see what they were doing and report back to England. So he was the one that is documented that he says there was a ship that landed, and there were 20 and odd, he calls them Negroes, that came off of the ship, and they sold them for food. Now, the Treasurer came in later, and that's the ship that Angela was on. I don't know if you heard the story about Angela being the first woman. Well, she didn't come in until later. She came in on August the 30th in that same year.
If you're saying the ship came to your area first,
yes,
and that's still 1619. When and you're saying that's August
the 25th.
Okay, when did they say the ship hit Georgetown?
You mean Jamestown?
Jamestown.
No, it didn't go. What it did, the ship came, the second ship, which was the Treasurer, it came to Point Comfort on August the 30th. A man by the name of William Pierce was at Point Comfort. He purchased Angela. The blog said Angelo, later it became Angela. He purchased her and took her to Jamestown. The ships didn't go.
So you're saying no ship even got to Jamestown?
Not those first two, no.
Oh my God. So what make them think that's the case? Well, why do you think they come up with that story?
Well, I think because no one disputed that until 1994, when Calvin Pearson, he is the founder of Project 1619 Incorporated, of which I'm on the board. He did a lot of research, and in 1994 he started telling the story, and it wasn't until 2011 that Jamestown acknowledged Point Comfort, and that was only after former President Barack Obama designated Fort Monroe as a national monument.
Oh, I see. Okay, let me ask you this question. How far, where are we talking about in terms of distance and the cities and stuff like that?
Jamestown,
they're on the coast, no?
They're not too far, because I used to work part-time there at Jamestown Yorktown Federation as an outreach instructor after I retired, and it's about a 35-40-minute drive from Hampton for me, from Hampton. So it's not that far.
How far is that drive from the fort?
I say give it about 5 more miles, because I live kind of like in the middle part of Hampton. The fort is right on the water. So you have to go all the way down to the end of Berkeley Boulevard in Hampton, and then you run into Fort Monroe. It's right on the water. And also, Fort Monroe was the only fort that was still in Union hands during the Civil War. So, because Virginia was a Confederate state, right. But Fort Monroe was a Union post in the heart of Virginia.
Okay, we're gonna get into that just a tad now. So now Hampton is on the water.
Yes.
And so you get to, and so the ships come to a dock there.
Well, no, it was not when they landed in 1619. It was just a little island. They didn't start building the fort until I think they said in the 1800s.
Okay.
So when they started, when they landed in 1619, this was an area that the Indians were living.
Okay.
Yeah. So they did fishing and stuff like that there, but it was not a fort. It was not a because it's a fortress. You can Google and look at the pictures of it there, because it's got a lot of it's got a lot of, it's very historical because Jefferson Davis was in prison there too.
So now what do they say happened? I think you might have said this already, to those first slaves that came off that ship and went to that fort.
Well, what happened was that there was 20 in art. Some of them went. Now, we know that 2 of them stayed here in Hampton, well, at Fort Monroe, because the commander was William Tucker, and he kept Antonio and Isabella in his service. Some of them went to Newport News, others went other places. Now, some of them did go to Jamestown, but let me tell you this, they didn't go to Jamestown. The governor and the Cape merchant took them, but put them on their own private plantations because they were hiding them. So in actuality, no, they did not go to Jamestown when that ship first came. They didn't, Angela went, and when she came later on in that month. And so they
why was he hiding them? Because there was something about it or something? Or what do you think that was?
I guess they didn't want anybody to know what they had done. I really don't know. I don't understand that either. But I said, well, because they really didn't know what to do with them. Here you've got these people that you have just purchased. And what are you going to do with them? I can imagine that they were wondering, what are we going to do with these people? So they took them to their private plantations, the Flower Dew. And that's where they kept them until Angela came, and she lived in the house of William Pierce. So that's the story of that. But
okay, so let me see if I got this. How about this one then? We getting somewhere too. We getting it up there. I'm getting it. Okay, so you're a white guy in America. Maybe you heard of slavery in Europe at this point, because slavery in Europe started a long time, and then all of a sudden here comes a ship with some black folks that we're gonna say they ain't got no rights, whatever, and we're gonna slave them. So the guy says, hey, and you can buy them from me for $20, whatever the amount is. And they said, okay, well, yeah, I can use somebody around the house. I can use somebody to help me with the yard and the growing of my harvest, right?
Yes.
So then they say, okay, well, you do it. But then you might have a little conscience, so you thinking, hey, I know I mean, they are a human being, and I know I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But nobody, this is the way it's gonna be, and then nobody can stop me.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna do it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. It's a story that's it's, I don't know what to say. When I talk about it, I'm kind of, I really don't have an answer because it's hard to think about people treating people the way our ancestors were treated. And when these enslaved Africans came, people, I always like to say they were enslaved, kidnapped people. That's my terminology, because I said, first of all, they didn't pack a suitcase to say I'm going on a trip. So they were kidnapped and they were enslaved when they got here. But then you hear some historians say, well, they were indentured servants. Well, those European indentured servants came and they had a contract. Our ancestors didn't have a contract, and they served anywhere from 15 to 30 years working for whoever had them. And Antonio and Isabella, I think they stayed in Hampton maybe about 20 years. They had the first documented child. His name was William. They named him after the commander. William Tucker was born. He was baptized in 1624. They don't know exactly when he was born, but he was the first documented African child born in English occupied territory. So, and he wasn't,
the woman wasn't raped, was she? I mean,
no, she met, well, she and Antonio went to William Tucker as a couple, and whether or not they were legally married, I don't know, but they lived together as husband and wife.
Two black people.
Had one child. Yeah, they only had one child. And that wasn't now, and he has descendants that still live here. And they have a cemetery in Hampton, the Tucker Family Cemetery, that the state gave them money, and that it is a landmark. It cannot be destroyed.
Now, so their name really might not have been Angela and stuff like that. when they got there, because they had an African name coming out of Africa.
And but what happened was, before they shipped them, they baptized them in the Portuguese faith. So they became Christians. So they gave them Christian names. And so when they came, they had, and I think from what I've read, that was a way to kind of make it easier that you baptize them as a Christian. I don't know what the logic was behind that, but they were baptized and they came with those names. Yes.
Unless a slave was just killed or lynched or something like that, other than eaten by a snake or whatever, some of those things. Did you find many of them lived to be 80 and 90, 70 years old and then after they did 30 years of slavery, they got their freedom, or they just died a slave?
Well, we don't know what happened to Anthony and Isabella. All I know is they left here and went to Henrico County area, but we don't know what happened to them. And then there was another family, another guy that went, but the oldest I have known people was like 60 something, but that lived in slavery. So I don't know of any, but the ones who they have the slave narratives that you read, they are older because they are here to tell you the story of being enslaved people. So those are interesting things to read because they actually tell you their story. There's one story by a young man that was a slave in Kentucky, and he was sold from his mother at age 6. And the day that he was sold, they sold all 12 of her children. And so, and you read those slave narratives, and and he was 6 years old, and it's like unbelievable. And he saw his mother maybe once a year for one night because they would allow her to go to different plantations to visit her 12 children. But so those are interesting, just you can Google slave narratives and you can read all kinds of stories about what happened to our people.
But again, I guess we could conclude that if you were a slave at the beginning, you might have died a slave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, possibly.
You might have did your whole life.
Yeah, it depends because according to what we have researched, as for the first group they came, because slavery did not become legal in Virginia until 1661. So those first people, they were in limbo. I mean, they weren't indentured servants by the terminology that we know of, that they had a contract. They weren't legally slaves because it wasn't legal, but what else can you say? I always call them, I said, enslaved, kidnapped Africans. That's how I refer to them because I don't see indentured anywhere in the way they were treated, but that's me. That's my term.
Now you say some of them had a contract.
What? The white European servants came with contracts where they could work for the person that paid their way for 3 to 7 years.
Okay, hold on. The white European servants.
Yes.
Who were they? They're white people?
Yeah, they came from England.
White people did.
Yeah.
Okay, white people were slaves too.
No, indentured servants. They didn't call them slaves because they came early. They came early before 1619, and they came as indentured servants where somebody paid their way to come to the New World, and then they had to serve them for 3 to 7 years. It depended on the contract. And then after that contract was over, then they were free to marry or get a job or get land. But our people, never did. I mean, those first 20 and odd, no. And we know that slavery became legal in 1661 in Virginia. So those first years, almost 40 years, they were in limbo, like, they're not indentured servants. They're not legal slaves. So what are they?
Yeah, but I mean, what's the difference? You got that. I don't care what you call me. You call me indentured servants.
The indentured servants at least knew they would be leaving soon. The enslaved people they didn't know. They didn't know when the master would let them go, or when the slave owner would let them go. Enslaved. It's a history that of uncertainty. They didn't know.
Yeah. Now Richmond was really notorious, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. They've got. Oh yeah. They've got to have a lot of monuments, and they had, because the governors, they've taken down some of them more than that. And they had a slave auction. It's really, because that was the seat of the Confederacy. The capital of the Confederacy was Richmond, Virginia.
Meaning that's where they gonna call their government is in Richmond and stuff like that, right?
Yes, yeah, that was the seat of the Confederacy, was Richmond, Virginia. Yes.
Wow. And is that near the ocean or something like that?
It's on the water, because they had ships to come in too. That's out there too. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so very much for being on Strong Inspirations. Everybody, I believe her. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna tell some folks, hey, it's not Jamestown.
No. All you gotta do Google Project 1619, and they'll tell you the story. And the city of Hampton had a commission. We commemorated 2019, 400 years. We had a big commemoration because I served on the committee for almost 5 years to plan. And so we had people from all over the world to come to Hampton. We had thousands of people during that weekend in August. So it's out there, but it's not being, I don't know why people still don't know, but it's true.
Is Jamestown a little mad at you for taking their thunder or something?
I think in the beginning, because they kept, Calvin would tell them, but they would ignore it until President Obama made Fort Monroe a national monument. And then they said, and then they changed their marker in 2015 to say that they did not land at Jamestown, but they came to Point Comfort and then came to Jamestown.
Okay, so now we got it right. Everybody, we got it correct. That's what we do here at Strong Inspirations.
Well, just one thing, the fact that Fort Monroe not only has the importance of being the place for the first enslaved Africans in English occupied territory, but it's also known as Freedom Fortress because in 1861, Benjamin Samuel Butler had 3 escaped slaves to come to Fort Monroe to ask for asylum. Because remember, I told you Virginia was in the Confederacy. They belonged to a man in Hampton. He gave them asylum, and with the fugitive slave law, he was supposed to return them to his master. But he said, well, they are property, so that means they're contrabands. So the contraband decision of 1861 gives Fort Monroe a Point Comfort the significance of being the first enslaved Africans and the first freedom fortress. After that decision, enslaved people came from all over and just set up contraband camps in Hampton.
Oh,
so that's significant. Yes.
And they set up camps there to be free.
Yes, because when General Butler said we're not returning them, and so he did not. Nope. And that's very significant. They have a memorial every year in May commemorating that contraband decision. Baker, Townsend, and Mallory, those were the 3 enslaved Africans. They were working for building something for the Confederacy in Norfolk. So,
man, that's got to be tough. It's almost like when your mother say, "Go get the switch, I'm gonna whip you." These guys saying, "Hey, you got to work for us so we can keep you enslaved."
Mm-hmm.
You got to help fight. You got to help us win the people that's trying to help you get your freedom.
Yes, that's true.
Oh, well, that's unbelievable. Everybody, Strong Inspirations, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. I don't care what button you hit, but hit a button. You got to be on this stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I tell you, I love to talk. So you gave me an opportunity to tell our story, and that's what I like to do. Oh,
thank you so very much. Now, is there a website for your ASALH chapter? Or
we're working on our website, but they can hit us up on Facebook. We have a Hampton Roads ASALH. Okay. That's on our Facebook page, and you can hit up Project 1619. We have a website. Yeah.
Thank you so very much for being on here. Everybody, read my book. I got all the ways slaves gained their freedom. Watch my movie. Thank you so very much for being on here with us.
And thank you for having me. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Have a great day, everybody. Stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind. We appreciate you. Bye-bye.